So, who are the 50 greatest Seahawks in franchise history? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. It's Sunday, but the Seahawks do not get their turn until later tonight. They have the Sunday night football slot tonight. So, it's going to be a while before we get to a game, which means the post-game video is not going to be until late, and the post-game stream is not going to be until very late. So we've got a little bit of time to kill here. We do have good games. We have some good games coming up, some very interesting games, some games that we as Seahawks fans even objectively have to care about. But we have a little bit of time to kind of kill here with something a little more frivolous and fun. So I thought now would be a good time to talk a little bit about something happening next season for the Seahawks that is kind of cool and is getting celebrated. 50 years as an NFL franchise. Next year, the Seahawks will celebrate their 50th season as an NFL franchise. And celebrating this, they will be announcing their top 50 players. And this is a process that people can vote in. So we as fans can contribute to this celebration and shape it in the way that we want. That's pretty cool. 50 seasons in the NFL is certainly a milestone. And for about half that time, they've actually been one of the stronger franchises in the NFL. Since Paul Allen and Mike Holmgren came to town, this has been a pretty strong franchise, a franchise that routinely makes the playoffs, wins playoff games, has very credible rosters, and has even enjoyed the pinnacle of success. They've gotten very close to the pinnacle of success a couple of times on top of that. So it's been a nice run, and it's nice that we get to celebrate this, but something like this does force one to ask a question. Who are the top 50 players in Seahawks franchise history? Who are the 50 best Seahawks of all time? So, after looking at this, I decided to put together a list. And I thought it'd be fun to go over the list in a video now. Now, this is kind of a first draft. I have it right in front of me. I don't think I captured everything that I wanted to capture here, but I think I did pretty well. And I'm interested to hear what you guys think. So we're going to go through this list, this top 50 player in Seahawks franchise history list. And if you guys feel like somebody's getting left out, then say so down below. And if you think that, then who should be pushed off so player X can be put in? Yeah, because you got to get to exactly 50. As much as we might like to, there's no 52, there's no 57, there's no 58. You got to get to 50. So keep that in mind. There are players that you might want to put on the list, but if you want to do that, you've then got to pull somebody off the list. So keep in mind that we're only going to consider contributions made as a Seahawks player, right? Like, we're not going to do Franco Harris or Jerry Rice or anything like that, obviously. I don't think I need to explain that. Also, we're just looking at players. So no coaches, no GMs, no media members, no owners, nothing like that. And I'm pretty sure they're just looking at the playing career. Somebody like Jordan Babineau, who was a pretty good player for the Seahawks for a while, and then went on to become an important member of the Seahawks media. I don't think his career gets enhanced by being a part of local sports media, or somebody like a Dave Wyman, maybe. That's an argument that you could at least make. I think that's arguable, but it's not really something that I'm looking at. All right, so let's go and go through my list here. These are exactly 50 players. Quarterback, I got Russell Wilson, Dave Krieg, and Matt Hasselbeck. Those are the three legitimate, long-ish term franchise quarterbacks that the Seahawks have had so far. Dave Krieg and Matt Hasselbeck both made, I think, 3 Pro Bowls. Russell Wilson made, 9? Hasselbeck made it to a Super Bowl. Wilson won a Super Bowl and made it to another. Dave Krieg made it to the first conference championship game in Seahawks franchise history. His stats are up there too, by the way. I was looking at Dave Krieg's stats earlier, and it's like, wow, easy to forget. Some people would say Jim Zorn because he was our first quarterback, but I think that on merit, you would be hard-pressed to argue that Jim Zorn should be a top 50 player in franchise history. I don't think you can do it. He was our first quarterback, and he had good moments, but I don't know if you can say he was a great player. All right, so that's quarterback. Running back, I got Sean Alexander, Marshawn Lynch, Kurt Warner, and Chris Warren. Those would be my four. I think it's pretty clear cut. I don't think there's really much to say here. I don't know who the guy on the bubble would necessarily be. Would it be somebody like Chris Carson? He didn't play that long, really. He didn't play that much. Could you maybe scrape up somebody else like we're not there with K9 yet, right? He's only in his third year. We're going to need to see him a little bit more before we do that. So those would be the four running backs. And then fullbacks, we got two. We got Max Strong and we got John Williams. Two iconic Seahawks. Their stats aren't big, but they certainly belong here, I believe. Okay, so wide receiver. This one's tough, but Steve Largent, obviously. Tyler Lockett, Brian Blades, Doug Baldwin, and the fifth wide receiver is tough. I went with Darrell Jackson because Darrell Jackson was on the Seahawks team that went to their first Super Bowl, and his stats are actually very, very comparable to Metcalf. I thought about Metcalf, but I don't know. I don't think we're there yet. I think we could be by next season. It wouldn't surprise me if DK jumps Jackson by the end of next season, but I don't think we're there yet. Darrell Jackson was here for a little bit more overall team success. Metcalf is certainly destined to take over that spot from D-Jack, but I don't think we're there yet. And I didn't really feel like any tight ends belonged. I didn't really think any tight ends should be on this team. Has not been a position where the Seahawks have found a lot of really big long-term success. Like, I think Jimmy Graham is probably the best tight end in franchise history, and he was here 3 years, right? So, no tight ends. Tackle, really, for me, there was only one tackle, Walter Jones. There were a couple of close calls, but I decided to put Walter Jones there, and to me, he's still the only guy who belongs there. Some people would argue Dwayne Brown, but I don't think Dwayne Brown was here long enough, and he really was only good for like 4 seasons anyway. The 5th year, he was pretty mediocre. And then guard, I go Chris Gray, Edwin Bailey, and Steve Hutchinson. I know Hutchinson wasn't here very long, but he was so good, I think it overrides that. Chris Gray, part of that Super Bowl 2005 offensive line, really underrated right guard. People forget about him now because everyone else around him was so good. And Edwin Bailey spent a long time as a Seahawk. I've met him a couple times, so I think he's got to make it as well. And to round out the offensive line, we had Robbie Tobeck, starting center for the team that made the Super Bowl, and Max Unger, who was actually an All-Pro while he was here, was the center for the team that won the Super Bowl and had a very, very strong career. He wasn't here overly long, and he did very quickly start having injury issues, but I think his level of play was so strong early in his career that it's still enough to make this team. So that's 20 players on offense, exactly 20 players made my top 50. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of a marker right there. That's remember 20 players. Again, I could not find a tight end. If anybody out there would like to suggest that maybe somebody like a John Carlson should have made it, I think you'd be hard pressed to do so personally, but maybe somebody will take the shot. I just don't think we've had any tight ends that were either had a long enough Seattle career or were dominant enough. Defense. Now we're going over the defense. Now we're going to start with defensive tackle. Well, no, excuse me. Let's start with the defensive end, like the edge rusher. Jacob Green, Jeff Bryant. I copied things down wrong. I meant to say Michael Sinclair, not Jeff Bryant. And I went with Michael Bennett over Cliff Averill. I think Bennett was the guy you were a little more afraid of as an opposing offense. So I went with Bennett over Averill. That was tough. I also thought that Clemens just wasn't here quite long enough. Bennett and Averill were both here a little bit longer, I think. And Clemens missed a decent chunk of time when he was here because of that injury he had. So I went with Jacob Green, Jeff Bryant, and Michael Bennett. Defensive tackle or interior down lineman. Went with Cortez Kennedy, Joe Nash, and Jaron Reed. Jaron Reed that one's a little bit questionable, I know, for some people, but he has very stealthily built a very nice Seattle career. And I think that if he's not there yet, then by the time he retires, assuming he comes back for another year or two after this year, his longevity combined with his consistent, solid production will make him a top 50 Seahawk. I think we're right on the cusp if we're not already there. And I feel like we're already there. Inside linebacker, I got Bobby Wagner and I got Lofa Tatupu. I know Tatupu only played 6 years, but he was a 3-time Pro Bowler. I think he made All-Pro first team once. And as a rookie, he helped this defense make the Super Bowl. I think that's somebody who definitely gets kind of lost in the sauce here because he just didn't play. He just didn't have the full career that he should have, but what he had was more than enough to get a lot of credit. Outside linebacker, I've got KJ Wright, Chad Brown, Leroy Hill, and Rufus Porter. I think those 4 guys very clearly belong. Maybe not Leroy Hill because he was kind of the sidekick to Lofa Tatupu, but Leroy Hill was actually here a little bit longer than Tatupu, and he put up good numbers and made very meaningful contributions to a defense that wasn't loaded, right? That mid to late 00s to early 2010 Seahawks, very early 2010 Seahawks, not loaded with talent, and Leroy Hill had to do a lot of the heavy lifting. So I could definitely be talked out of Leroy Hill, but I put him on here for now. Cornerback, we got Richard Sherman, Marcus Trufant, Dave Brown, Patrick Hunter, and Sean Springs. Little bit of room for debate here. There's Ken Lucas. Ken Lucas is a name. I know he was only here for his rookie contract and then the one last year before he retired, but Ken Lucas put up some serious numbers when he was here. You look back and it's better than you think. Trust me. Go look back at Ken Lucas's Seahawks career. You'll be surprised at how productive he was for us. But I think those 5 guys probably deserve it more. Safety, starting with the kind of the strong safety spot, I guess. You go Kenny Easley, Robert Blackman, Cam Chancellor, and Jay Bellamy. Obviously, Easley and Chancellor are automatically there. Blackman and Bellamy less so, but they were very productive and they had very good Seattle careers. They've certainly been forgotten about compared to guys like Easley and Chancellor, who are legends of the game, but I think they belong. Free safety, Earl Thomas, Eugene Robinson, John Harris, Quandre Diggs, and Darrell Williams. So that's actually a lot of free safeties. And I think the first 3 are immutable. Earl Thomas, Eugene Robinson, John Harris. Diggs made 3 Pro Bowls when he was here and was considered one of the best in the league at what he did. So I think he's got to be there. Darrell Williams, a little bit more thin. He was only here 4 seasons, but he was very productive. He made a Pro Bowl. I think he probably sticks there as well. And that's everything on defense. That's 26 players. So I found definitely more players on defense than offense, but it was 26 defensive players in total. So like a full roster worth. You could build a really, really dominant roster out of that selection of players, I think. I'd probably prefer to have one more edge rusher and maybe swap out one of the free safeties, but pretty good. And then we have 4 spots left. That's going to go to Norm Johnson, Stephen Hauschka, and then the 2 punters will be John Ryan and Michael Dixon. Norm Johnson is the all-time points leader for the Seahawks. Stephen Hauschka was our longest tenured kicker, I think, and he was the kicker when we won the Super Bowl. John Ryan is the most successful, longest tenured punter in Seahawks history, to my knowledge, and he was here when we won the Super Bowl. And Michael Dixon's just the best punter we've ever had. And I mean, I know it's early in his career, but he's already well on pace to be one of the greatest punters of all time. So even with his shorter career, he just has to make it. All right, so that's my 50. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about it? Is there anything glaring that you would note as an omission? I'm sure I missed something, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. One more time, Russell Wilson, Dave Craig, Matt Hasselbeck, Sean Alexander, Marshawn Lynch, Kurt Warner, Chris Warren, Max Strong, John Williams, Steve Largent, Tyler Lockett, Brian Blades, Doug Baldwin, Daryl Jackson, Walter Jones, Chris Gray, Edwin Bailey, Steve Hutchinson, Robbie Tobeck, Max Unger, Jacob Green, Jeff Bryant, Michael Bennett, Cortez Kennedy, Joe Nash, Jaron Reed, Bobby Wagner, Lofa Tatupu, KJ Wright, Chad Brown, Leroy Hill, Rufus Porter, Richard Sherman, Marcus Trufant, Dave Brown, Patrick Hunter, Sean Springs, Kenny Easley, Robert Blackman, Cam Chancellor, Jay Bellamy, Earl Thomas, Eugene Robinson, John Harris, Quandre Diggs, Daryl Williams, Norm Johnson, Stephen Hauschka, John Ryan, Michael Dixon.